Delta Force. The name alone makes people lower their voice slightly, like they're worried someone's listening. And you know what? Someone probably is. Officially known as the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, a name so boring it has to be a cover. Delta Force is the U.S. Army's Tier 1 counterterrorism unit, founded in 1977 by Colonel Charlie Beckwith, who was so inspired by the British SAS that he basically said, "I want one of those, but louder and with more funding." Delta operates in extreme secrecy. The Pentagon technically doesn't acknowledge their existence for years at a time. Their soldiers don't wear uniforms with unit patches. They often have long hair, civilian clothes, and general beard situations that make them look less like commandos and more like a guy who's really into acoustic guitar. Don't be fooled. Their missions include hostage rescue, direct action raids, and counterterrorism at the highest level. They train for years just to enter the unit. The selection process alone is infamous. Weeks of sleep deprivation, brutal land navigation, carrying absurd amounts of weight over impossible distances, and psychological pressure designed to make you quit. Most people do. The ones who don't become Delta operators. They've been involved in operations you've heard of and many more you haven't. Mogadishu in 1993, hunting high-value targets in Iraq. Things that simply don't make the news because Delta prefers it that way. Delta Force doesn't want you to know about Delta Force. And somehow, music, that's exactly what makes everyone so obsessed with Delta Force. SEAL Team 6, or if you want to be precise, and they very much want you not to be, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, also known as DEVGRU. Here's a fun fact. When the Navy created SEAL Team 6 in 1980, there were only 2 SEAL teams at the time. Commander Richard Marcinko named it 6 specifically to confuse Soviet intelligence into thinking there were more teams than actually existed, a lie so effective that the name stuck forever, even after the fake teams were invented for real. Incredible. DEVGRU is the Navy's equivalent to Delta Force, a Tier 1 special missions unit focused on the most sensitive, most dangerous, and most heavily classified operations the United States conducts anywhere on Earth. You know them because on May 2, 2011, they're the ones who raided a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan and ended a decade-long manhunt. That operation, Operation Neptune Spear, is possibly the most famous special operations mission in American history. 23 SEALs inserted by helicopter into a hostile compound in the dark in a foreign country without that country knowing they were coming. They were in and out in under 40 minutes. By the time anyone outside the loop knew what had happened, the team was already gone. DEVGRU operators are some of the most skilled human beings alive. They specialize in maritime counterterrorism, which sounds cool because it is cool. Boarding ships at sea, diving into harbors in the dark, flying across the world on almost no notice to do unspeakable things to people who absolutely deserve it. The existence of SEAL Team 6 is officially acknowledged. The actual details of what they do, officially, not so much. Navy SEALs, the most famous special operations brand in the world, the ones with the books, the ones with the podcasts, the ones who wake up at 4:30 a.m. and need you to know about it. Let's be clear, regular Navy SEALs, not DEVGRU, not the guys we just talked about, are already extraordinary. SEAL stands for sea, air, and land, and the name isn't just cool marketing. These operators genuinely fight in all 3 environments, transitioning between them like they were born without a natural habitat. The path to becoming a SEAL runs through BUD/S, Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL Training, which is widely considered one of the most brutal military training programs on the planet. BUD/S lasts 6 months. The dropout rate hovers around 75 to 80%, and the crown jewel of misery within BUD/S, Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous operations on less than 4 hours of sleep total, running in freezing surf zones, carrying inflatable boats over your head, being cold, wet, sandy, and exhausted while instructors calmly drink coffee and watch you suffer. And that's just to earn the right to continue training. SEALs conduct direct action raids, special reconnaissance, counterterrorism, foreign internal defense, and a range of clandestine operations across every theater of conflict. They've been in Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, the Philippines, and dozens of places whose names will never appear on a deployment patch. They are also, statistically, more likely than anyone else in the military to write a best-selling memoir, which is both impressive and slightly predictable at this point. 75th Ranger Regiment. Rangers lead the way. That's their motto, and they mean it with a kind of intensity that should make you stand a bit straighter. The Rangers are the U.S. Army's premier raid force. Fast, hard, disciplined, and trained to strike anywhere in the world within 18 hours of being notified. That's not a slogan, that's a literal operational requirement built into their mission profile. While you're still deciding what to have for breakfast, a Ranger battalion can be wheels up, cross an ocean, and be kicking down a door. The regiment consists of 3 active duty battalions plus a regimental special troops battalion, each one permanently on a rotating alert cycle. This means at any given moment, a portion of the regiment is packed, ready, and waiting for a phone call that could send them to places that don't make it onto the evening news. Ranger School, not to be confused with being an actual ranger in the regiment, is its own legendary institution. It's a 62-day course that strips soldiers down to their absolute limits of sleep deprivation and caloric deficit, that expects them to lead. Many elite soldiers from all branches go through Ranger School without ever joining the regiment. It's that respected. The actual 75th Regiment takes this even further. Every Ranger earns the right to wear the tan beret through a selection and assessment process on top of whatever other training they've already done. These are professional raiders, men who have mastered airborne operations, air assault, direct action, and urban warfare with a level of repetition and precision that borders on obsessive. In short, if a building needs to be taken right now, these are your guys. Green Berets, the quiet professionals, the ones who will learn your language, drink your local beverage, and spend months building your village's trust, and then quietly help your village destroy an insurgent network with smiles. Officially, they're U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Beret they wear, authorized by John F. Kennedy in 1961, who called them a symbol of excellence, a badge of courage, a mark of distinction, became so iconic that the hat became the name. Here's what separates Green Berets from almost every other force on this list. Their primary mission isn't always direct combat. It's foreign internal defense and unconventional warfare, meaning their job is often to go into a country, find local forces or resistance fighters and train them, advise them, equip them, and work alongside them to achieve a strategic objective. They are force multipliers. One 12-man operational detachment alpha, an ODA or A-team, can effectively multiply into hundreds of capable fighters when they do their job right. Every Green Beret is a specialist. Each ODA contains 2 officers and 10 non-commissioned officers, each trained in one of 5 specialties: weapons, engineering, medical, communications, or operations. And here's the kicker, they're all cross-trained. The medic can shoot, the weapons sergeant can do field medicine, everyone can do a little of everything. They also have to learn a foreign language. Mandatory, 'cause how are you going to build trust with a community if you need a translator for every conversation? Green Berets are patient in a way that other special operations forces aren't always required to be. They play the long game. And the long game, historically, is how wars are actually won. Marine Raiders. If the Green Berets are the patient chess players of special operations, the Marine Raiders are the guys who flip the board, win the fight, and then very politely help you set it back up again. The United States Marine Corps Forces, Special Operations Command, MARSOC, was formally activated in 2006, making it one of the younger members of the special operations community. But don't mistake young for inexperienced. The Raiders draw from the most competitive Marines in the Corps, and their lineage traces back to the original Marine Raider battalions of World War II, the ones who conducted some of the most audacious amphibious raids in the Pacific Theater. MARSOC's core unit is the Marine Special Operations Team, or MSOT, a 15-man element that mirrors the structure and capability of Army Special Forces ODAs. Raiders conduct direct action, music, special reconnaissance, counterterrorism, and foreign internal defense. They work alongside partner forces in some of the world's most difficult operating environments. What makes the Raiders distinct is what they bring from their Marine DNA, a hardened expeditionary mindset. Marines are built around the idea of operating from the sea, deploying rapidly, and fighting in austere conditions with minimal logistical support. Plug that cultural baseline into a special operations framework, and you get something genuinely formidable. The selection process for MARSOC, the individual training course, is predictably brutal. The washout rate is high. The ones who make it are not people you want to meet in a professionally adversarial context. The Raiders are proof that the Marine Corps, which already thought it was elite, can be made even more elite. The Corps, for what it's worth, agrees. Pararescuemen, or PJs, the Air Force's answer to the question, what if your combat medic could also skydive, dive underwater, and navigate terrain that most people would look at and simply go home? PJs are special operations personnel whose primary mission is personnel recovery, finding and rescuing isolated, injured, or captured military personnel in hostile environments. Their motto is, that others may live. It is not a marketing slogan. These people will insert into active combat zones to pull out a downed pilot, a wounded soldier, or anyone else the military has a responsibility to bring home. The training pipeline to become a PJ is one of the longest in the entire U.S. military. It spans roughly 2 years and includes the Special Operations Combat Medic Course, Military Freefall School, Combat Dive School, Survival School, and more. By the time a PJ earns the right to wear the maroon beret, they are a qualified paramedic, a combat diver, a parachutist, and a trained small unit operator capable of defending themselves and their patients in a firefight. They deploy with Special Operations Task Forces, fly on combat search and rescue missions with the elite Night Stalkers and regular Air Force rescue squadrons, and have saved lives in every major U.S. conflict since the Vietnam War. The PJ community is small, deliberately so. There aren't many people in the world capable of meeting every standard required. The ones who do tend to be walking, breathing arguments for the upper limit of what a human being can learn and endure. When everything has gone wrong and someone needs to be brought home, PJs are the ones who go get them. Night Stalkers, 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the people who fly Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 to the things that don't make the news. If special operations is a team sport, and it absolutely is, then the Night Stalkers are the ones who get everyone to the game. At night, at ultra-low altitude, in weather conditions that would ground most other aviation assets, with a precision that has to be experienced to be believed. The 160th was born from failure. After the disastrous 1980 Operation Eagle Claw, the failed attempt to rescue American hostages in Iran, which ended with helicopters colliding in the desert, the Army recognized it needed dedicated aviation units trained specifically for special operations missions. The Night Stalkers were the answer. Their motto, Night Stalkers don't quit. Their reputation, earned. They fly AH/MH6, Little Birds, the MH-60 Black Hawk variants, and MH-47 Chinook variants, all heavily modified with advanced avionics, terrain-following radar, and weapon systems that turn them into something between a helicopter and a surgical instrument. Night Stalker pilots train for thousands of hours before they're considered mission-ready. They fly with night vision goggles at speeds and altitudes that would give most commercial pilots a medical episode. They practice specific insertion and extraction techniques so repeatedly that by the time they do it for real, it's muscle memory. The raid on bin Laden's compound used Night Stalker helicopters. The Black Hawk Down battle in Mogadishu involved Night Stalker crews. For 30 years, if a Tier 1 operation went somewhere by air, Night Stalkers took it there. They are not famous. They prefer it that way. The operators they carry tend to be loud enough for both of them. Psychological operations, PSYOP, the military's professional persuaders. And yes, that is somehow an official military specialty, now renamed Military Information Support Operations in official doctrine, because psychological operations apparently made too many people uncomfortable in congressional hearings. These soldiers are specialists in influencing the beliefs, perceptions, and behaviors of target audiences in support of military objectives. In plain terms, they are trained to change minds, enemy minds, civilian minds, anyone whose attitude or behavior stands between the U.S. military and its strategic goals. PSYOP soldiers design and deploy what are called products, leaflets, radio broadcasts, loudspeaker messages, digital content, calibrated for specific populations in specific contexts. During the Gulf War, PSYOP units dropped hundreds of millions of leaflets over Iraqi positions, urging soldiers to surrender. Enormous numbers of Iraqi troops did exactly that. The leaflets worked. PSYOP is part of the U.S. Army Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command. Their soldiers go through a specialized qualification course at Fort Liberty that teaches them target audience analysis, influence theory, cultural awareness, and media production. It is a genuinely intellectual special operations specialty in a community that tends to value people who can also sprint with a very heavy bag. Here's the thing about PSYOP that often goes underappreciated. Winning a fight without firing a weapon is better than winning a fight. If you can convince an enemy that resistance is futile, that surrender is honorable, or that their leadership has already abandoned them before a single shot is fired, you've achieved the same objective at a fraction of the cost. The pen, as it turns out, can be mightier. The military just prefers to have the sword. 2. Just in case. Civil affairs. If you looked at this list and thought, okay, but who actually handles the aftermath? This is your answer. Civil affairs soldiers are special operations personnel, though some serve in conventional forces, trained to operate at the intersection of military operations and civilian life. Their job is to manage the relationship between military forces and the civilian population in an area of operations, minimize civilian interference with military missions, and support the reconstruction of civil society in post-conflict environments. That sounds bureaucratic. It is not bureaucratic. It is, in many ways, one of the most complex and consequential roles in the entire special operations ecosystem. Civil affairs teams deploy alongside special forces, rangers, and other units to do things like establish local governance structures, restore essential services, identify and work with local leaders, and prevent civilian populations from becoming adversaries. They work with NGOs, international organizations, host nation governments, and local communities in environments that are often still actively dangerous. Here's why this matters strategically. You can win every single tactical engagement of a war and still lose the war if the population turns against you. Civil affairs soldiers are the ones tasked with preventing that outcome. They are conflict strategists as much as they are soldiers. The Army's Special Forces Civil Affairs Units, and there are also Marine and Reserve Components Civil Affairs Units, are among the most consistently deployed and least publicly celebrated elements of the U.S. Special Operations enterprise. They don't blow things up. More often, they build things, which, in the long run, tends to matter more. Joint Terminal Attack Controllers. JTACs. The people on the ground who talk to the aircraft overhead and make sure the aircraft overhead hits the right thing. This specialty is perhaps the most technically demanding and pressure-loaded job in all of special operations that doesn't get nearly enough credit. A JTAC is a qualified service member, often an Air Force Special Tactics Officer or Combat Controller, sometimes Army or Marine personnel with additional training, who is certified to direct air-to-ground fires in a combat environment. What that means in practice: a JTAC is embedded with ground forces, identifies targets, communicates with fighter jets, bombers, or armed drones flying overhead, calculates and confirms target coordinates, deconflicts airspace to prevent fratricide, and issues the clearance to release munitions, often under fire, often while moving, often with incomplete information and very limited time. The margin for error in this job is essentially zero. A JTAC error can mean a bomb hitting the wrong building. It can mean friendly forces being struck. The weight of that responsibility is simply not compatible with anything other than absolute mastery of the task. Air Force Special Tactics Operators, Combat Controllers, go through one of the most demanding pipelines in any branch of the military to earn their certification. Army Special Forces soldiers can also earn JTAC qualification, as can a range of other special operations personnel. In the years of heavy combat operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, JTACs were among the most requested and highest impact individuals in any special operations task force. The ability to call in precision air power at a moment's notice is a capability that changes the entire tactical math of a fight. They're small, quiet, and extremely load-bearing in multiple senses of that phrase. The United States maintains all of these forces simultaneously across every continent. Right now, tonight, most of them you'll never hear about. Most of what they do won't make the news, and they are completely fine with that. The best operations are the ones no one ever knows happened.